All right, T-14, custom configurations. You will find many reasons why you would want to, customize computer systems based on what you're going to use them for, especially in enterprise situations. Like if, for a register at a retail outlet, you aren't necessarily going to want a fully functional desktop. That wouldn't really make much sense. And it doesn't necessarily need all the components and power and capabilities of a desktop. So you actually could do a more stripped down version of something like that. Now, on the other hand, if you were going to do, say, video editing or AutoCAD or something like that, you're going to definitely want a more a souped up system that can handle a lot more processing power so that you could actually perform the functions of your job. So right here in this particular session, we're going to be kind of diving into some specific customizations. This isn't going to be a real deep dive into each kind because, there is a 1,000 different ways you could customize computers to fit your individual needs within the organization. These are going to be a little more general, but kind of getting your mind wrapped around it so you kind of understand, the types of things you would need to do for particular situations. All right, basic objectives we're going to be covering today. I'm going to describe the different custom configurations to meet common client needs. So they're going to give us general types of customizations they're going to want you to do. A+ particular loves this kind of thing. So they will ask, if we have somebody who is doing audio editing, what kind of modifications would you need to make to the computer in order for them to be more successful at their job or be more capable of completing the tasks that they need to complete. We're going to describe the features and characteristics of the different custom configuration workstations, and given specific scenarios like we were just talking about, select the appropriate components for the custom PC configuration to meet those specific needs. Key BSMs for this particular T-session will be communication, as you will need to communicate with the client to find out what their particular needs are so that you would know exactly how to help them and have a growth mindset so that we can always stay on top of industry standards and know what would be needed for those particular situations. All right. This one, Kaidan, could you please help me out and read this one?
Specialized computer needs require specialized PCs to get the job done. IT professionals should know how to build a PC according to customer needs. The three most common are workstation PCs, media workstation, and specialized computer PCs. I mean, consumer
Thank
PCs.
You. So it's the three, overall generalizations, like consumer needs. Someone who kind of works for, has like a small home office that they operate from the house is going to have very different needs than basically a extreme gamer who, is trying to run the latest and greatest video games, and have the lowest latency, highest resolution and frames per second running. So there's going to be drastically different needs within even just that genre. So the communication with the customer is paramount in trying to figure out what they need, because you don't want to essentially gold plate it for them, though you may get, if you're the one building the PCs for them, it may generate more funds for you. Short term, long term, you've oversold and they may be less likely to come back to you. So you don't want to oversell the customer, you don't want to undersell the customer, you want to try to get them exactly what they need for their particular jobs they're trying to accomplish. Any questions with that? All right. The first type of, I guess you could call it a customization, although it is more typical for its lack of customization. It's called the thick client. Marcus, can you please read this one for us?
A thick client PC is a PC that has all the capabilities of a standard PC, It runs a modern OS and general productivity applications to accomplish the majority of tasks needed by office and home users. The key to a good thick client is sufficient core hardware to support the OS and typical desktop applications such as office productivity and network applications.
Excellent, thank you. And when you're thinking about a thick client, it is a PC right out of the box. I mean, there is no real custom configurations involved with it for the most part. This is basically a desktop as is. And you basically just want the software and, general technical support that would go along with it, but you wouldn't upgrade anything, you wouldn't downgrade anything. It's just basically as is. Any questions on thick clients? All right. Next is the inverse of that, which would be a thin client. Kareem, can you please read this one out for us?
Thin client. A thin client is a system designed to outsource much of its work. These PCs have just enough hardware and power to run the selected OS and few basic applications. Thin clients usually rely on resources from powerful servers, so they may not have hard drives, or store any data. They serve as single-purpose systems like point-of-sale machines. The only requirement for thin clients are network connectivity and access to servers over those networks.
There you go. Thank you very much, Kareem. And basically, as we were just talking about a few minutes ago, this would be similar to modern cash registers or, self-checkout cash registers and stuff like that. I believe Brian mentioned you had experience with a lot of these. These would essentially be, for the most part, stripped down computers that have a very, very basic operating system on them that is basically telling the operating system, in order to get all the information and the applications you need, you must have network connectivity and contact the main servers, and that is where the bulk of the information would lie, not actually on the PC that is running. And the main modification you're going to have on this, the main requirement would be network connectivity. So that is the modification that would absolutely be critical for a thin client. Any questions on thin clients? Brian, would you say that's pretty much an accurate assessment of how a thin client would run?
Yeah, that's pretty much spot on. That's about as basic as you can get with it. They have no software, or they don't have anything that they rely on itself. It's fully over the network. You can think of it almost like a VPN service. You're VPNing into another PC, and they just get all their information from there. Everything's just basically hosted on a master server.
Yeah, and there's basically just enough information on it to tell it, hey, you need to connect back to the main Pixie servers or whatever.
Yep. Those was the easiest things to fix. All I had to just pop one out and put another one in and make sure the IP address was correct and walk away.
There you go. But
Kelly,
in
can
a
I ask a
situation
question?
like that, absolutely.
Sorry, so are they often connected to a monitor? Or I guess I just, having no experience with them, don't know what the user experience or interaction or interface is like.
They're connected to a monitor that you'll use it as if it was like a regular workstation. The only difference is depending on how the setup is, it'll look like an ordinary workstation. It's just the only difference is you're not physically working on the thin client itself. You're just using whatever it's connected to.
Like the basic explanation, like the most stripped down version you could see of it is essentially like a point of sale, where you have the cashier at like Target or something like that is scanning with a little barcode scanner. That's hooked up to a thin client that's underneath the counter right where they're standing. And then the screen where they're seeing all the point of sale information come up, everything that you're purchasing, that would be the output of that. But they're not going to put a fully functional computer underneath there. They're going to have a very, very stripped down version that only has the bare minimum of what they need to communicate with the main servers, because they want to keep all that information off site.
Yeah, so you go to like the doctor's office and you see you go in like the rooms, they have like the little small little towers by the monitors, or they're like connected to the
micro towers. Yeah,
micro towers. Most of the micro towers are thin clients. or even when you see
Yeah.
the nurses walking around with like the carts, all those are thin clients. So in the event those are taken, then they don't lose into personal information that
Yeah.
could be confidential that's on them.
Absolutely, absolutely. And even in logistics, when we operated in operations, they were all thin clients as well, with the exception of key people who actually had laptops that they would carry home with them. But for the most part, it was thin clients that you would connect to a virtual desktop VPN, and you would operate off of that. So is there any particular questions on VPN or on non-VPNs?
How does it boot without a hard drive?
Network boot.
No, there is a small hard drive in there, and it has a very, very basic operating system. And that operating system is basically just telling it, hey, I need you to connect to this server, and that's where it gets all the rest of its information.
Yeah. Some of them
So yes, there is a modicum of storage on it.
This is a different PC setup. A thin client is a different PC setup than a virtual guest, which doesn't have a hard drive.
Yes. All right. Any more questions on thin clients before we move on to the next one?
Biggest takeaway, I think, Chris, is that everything comes through via your Active Directory account. Once you log in, it's powered up. It's feeding information live through that network setup with running all of the resources from having that network set up. So a question that you'll see for testing purposes is the requirement of having that network connectivity. That's the driving force of thin client. Just wanted to circle back and make sure we brought that home.
Yeah, so when they say what would be the key requirements or upgrades you would need to make to the system, a really good network connectivity, that would be the main thing you would take away from a thin client. Thick client, nothing. It's out of the box. That's the way it is. There is no physical modifications needed for those systems. They basically are what they are, and you basically are purchasing the one you want, and it operates as is, with the exception of software, obviously. All right, next, virtual workstations. Let's see here. Kimberly, can you please read for us?
Virtualization enables to run more than one operating system at the same time in a single computer. A virtualization PC is called host, while the VMs are called guests. All hardware resources from the PC are shared between the multiple virtual PCs and the host PC. It saves hardware costs when needing to have access to different operating systems for many reasons, including testing software on different platforms, working in a support environment.
Excellent, thank you. So when they are speaking, when they mention a virtual machine, they are talking about the host machine. That is, a virtualization workstation. They are talking about the host machine. That is the specific system that they are talking about modifications. And in this particular case, you are wanting to be able to run multiple operating systems at one time. So one of the biggest upgrades you're going to want to make is a multi-core processor. I think this one continues on. There we go. And here is our requirements. Okay. And for this one, Kristen, can you please read?
Virtualization requirements. For good performance on a virtualization environment, a lot of RAM is required and a fast CPU with multiple cores is recommended. RAM is the most important requirement since each virtualization workstation needs enough memory to run the native OS, the guest OS, and any other applications running in either OS. If there's not enough memory, the VM will not start. A powerful 64-bit CPU with many cores also helps virtual machines to run smoothly.
Excellent, thank you. So the big, again, the big two things is RAM and your CPU. And the RAM, especially if anybody's played around with virtual machines at all, once you dedicate that RAM to that VM, and when that VM is running, you don't have access to that memory that has been dedicated to that particular virtual machine. So you're definitely going to want enough RAM to run each one of these. And this is the other side of the thin client, where if you're going to have 50, 100 machines, thin clients connecting, you're going to need enough processing power to be able to handle all those operating systems independently with enough RAM backing it up to be able to support it. Marvin, did you have something to add? I see you're coming off mute.
Marcus has a question. I wanted to make sure we caught up before we went on.
I saw his hand was up. I just didn't know if you wanted. Okay, go ahead, Marcus.
Thanks. I'm sorry, I read on this and I don't think I'm getting what it looks like in practical purposes. Would you mind describing it as if you were the host and I'm the VM, just to give me an idea of what it would look like in use?
Okay. So in use, you are essentially a thin client. Basically, all you have is instructions that once you come online, you need to connect to me. And once you've made that connection to me, I say, for just the sake of argument, say I have a 8-core processor with multi-threading so that I can essentially operate like I have 16 cores. So I can operate, the host operating system if I am a level 2 hypervisor. And then beyond that, I could set up, say, 15 other virtual machines to operate. And then I would need to have enough RAM so that all 15 of you can run those operating systems at the same time. So instead of if you had Windows, you needed to use Windows for your job. You don't have Windows on your machine. So you contact me, and then essentially you open up another window, and then I will basically look like a Windows desktop to you. And then all the fun applications that you need to actually do your job, be it like Access or PowerPoint or Excel or whatever, are all there, but they wouldn't actually be hosted on your machine. They would only be on mine. And then you could use those functions to do what you need to do, and then you save it, and then when you log off, that's kept on my machine. Does that make a little more sense?
Yeah, and I was just going to ask a question, but it looks like Marvin said we have a session coming up on that, but I just didn't know if Windows allowed that. Is that a way to skirt the fact that you only have one license?
No. Great question, and the answer is
good question,
no.
Marcus. You're
for every virtualization, yeah, for every virtual Windows that you actually have, you will need an independent license for that. It is not a way to skirt it, unfortunately. Now, during this class, we will have you guys set up virtual machines on your computers, and we'll give you 2 different operating systems to run. You will run Windows 7, but you'll be running it in a buffer period where you don't have to register it. So you'll be installing a Windows 7 virtual machine, and you'll be installing a Kali Linux virtual machine on your own computer. And so you can kind of get much more familiar. If you're not familiar with working with Windows, you can work on it there. And if you're not familiar with working in a Linux environment, you'll get some experience with Kali as well. So you will have a little more hands-on experience with the whole virtualization process as we kind of work through it. I think it's going to be close to the end of 10.01 or right at the beginning of 10.02. We will start working with virtual machines, but we will start the install of those machines a little bit earlier.
So good, really good question, Marcus. And I guarantee you're not the only one thinking of that and wondering those questions. So you kind of hit home a lot of good things. And to know that we will have a lot more opportunities to kind of go into virtualization heavier for the sake of custom configurations, RAM and multiple cores. And for the obvious reason, if you're running multiple operating systems, you want to be able to do it efficiently, and then those multiple cores would allow that. So a lot of RAM and a really good processor with multiple cores is those big take homes for virtualization. And like I said, very good question. I like those questions. That was really good.
Absolutely, yeah. We will have a whole section just on virtualization where we talk about the hypervisors and different stuff like that. So yeah, we will dive a little bit deeper. This is kind of giving you more of an overview, like just kind of touching on the subject. So the big takeaways for a virtual machine is you definitely want a big multi-core CPU, and you definitely want enough RAM to run it. And I would suggest upgraded network, connection. But I don't think that they actually select that for the test. Just the two, the RAM and the CPU. So those are the two big takeaways for virtualization machines. Any questions on that so far with what we've covered? Although bear in mind, yes, we will be diving deeper into it in a later T session. All right. Let's see what we got next. Graphics workstation. So this is a big one for engineers, animators, stuff like that. If anybody's ever had any experience with CAD programs, I remember working on AutoCAD when I was much younger, and ElectroCAD when I was thinking about getting into engineering, and computer-aided manufacturing for doing 3D modeling and rendering and stuff like that, and animation. I had a friend that did 3D animation, and it is extremely processor heavy. So definitely going to want computers with upgraded systems. You're going to want solid state hard drives for rapid writing and reading, for tons of information that you're going to be utilizing. You want to maximize the RAM as much as you can fit or afford. High-end video cards, because you get the additional RAM and processing power out of that. And obviously high quality monitors for visualization. And I do believe they actually recommend 2 separate monitors, like an additional monitor, so that you can literally have your rendering being done on one screen, but continue to work on other projects on the other. So the main takeaways for like graphics PCs, as we were just talking about, is maximum RAM, high-end video cards, and high quality monitors, and solid state hard drives for speed of reading and writing. Notice on this, they do not have an upgraded CPU. Can anybody take a guess as to why?
Is it because it's not needed, because all the work is done with the RAM and the graphics card, or mostly with the graphic card?
There you go. Most of the computational power for the the heavy lifting is going to be done by the GPU, not by the CPU. So you do not need to upgrade the central processing unit for the graphics PC. Does that make sense? All right. Another big one, it kind of falls into the same category as the graphical editing, would be the audio editing. And the only difference here would be, a high-end audio interface, like a mixing boards and stuff like that. And much better speakers and, input, output, cabling and devices to, facilitate this. That is the main takeaway for the audio. It's the only real difference between the audio and the visual is just the higher quality. They actually have audio cards specifically for stuff like this. Gamers do use them from time to time because the audio quality coming off of the motherboard may not necessarily be what they want. So they will actually upgrade and get specific audio cards that will give you really crisp 3D sound and stuff like that. And that's something that you would want to integrate within a audio editing workstation. Any questions with regards to that?
Which is obvious and it makes sense if you think about it. You have a heavier emphasis on your audio interface. That's kind of almost an easy way to take it home. So.
Okay. Video editing workstations. Let's see here. Alvarez, can you please read for us?
All right, video editing workstation. Video editing workstations combine the requirements from audio and graphics workstations. Video editing requires a very powerful CPU paired with as much RAM as possible, since it is a far more intensive process than graphics and audio editing. Also, some video editing workstations have multiple hard drives set up in a RAID for added storage capacity and enhanced read-write speed. A second monitor is recommended for better use of editing software.
Excellent. Thank you. So this one is just basically taking it a step further. They want the more powerful CPU and RAM in addition to the upgraded graphics cards. And instead of using a solid state hard drive, they're going to go another level up on that and go to a RAID array and the addition of the second monitor. Any particular questions on video editing workstations?
That should hit home, Alvarez, since you know that you got all your photos and things of that nature. Having RAID is a great way to have access to that quickly.
I have a question. Just from the reading too, it was kind of a little conflicting in terms of what kind of hard drives are typically used. Is it safe to say that most of the time it's hard disk drives for the larger capacity for these kinds of workstations?
You definitely, like with the video editing workstation, it is going to be a ton of actual storage and data. So yes, that's why they're going to go with the RAID array versus just using a independent solid state drive. For your graphics editing, it's a ton of processing power, but once the processing has been done, the actual storage is not as significant as, you know, a video editing. And the same with audio files. Even with the high quality audio files that you will get, you know, in say like a soundstage or something like that, it's not going to be as intensive. But when you start combining all these things together, then you really need very high capacity and high speed storage, which is where a RAID array would come in. What RAID array would you suggest for a video editor of the 0, 1, 5, and 10? What do you think would probably be the best for storage and speed?
I would say a 5.
Pretty good. 5 is pretty good. Now, say they absolutely are critical that they want to maintain data integrity, and you know, because you've been working on this project for a couple of years and they don't want to run any risks with losing that data. What then would you recommend?
RAID 10.
Perfect.
RAID 10 with possibly 6 drives.
Well, depending on the amount of storage you need. So that would be the, you know, the volume would dictate the number of drives in addition to the 4 core drives you have.
Yeah, because video is the worst in terms of storage. They use up the most.
Yes. Yes, absolutely, especially in an editing environment.
Especially if you're doing 4K.
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
The RAID 10 thing would be for somebody who's like with a corporation or a company that had servers though, right? That's like 100% hardware.
I mean, it doesn't necessarily need to be full-blown servers. I mean, you could have a small office of like 15, 20 people, and you do video editing for local companies and stuff like that, like doing commercials, or you do freelance stuff for streaming and, you know, various things like that. You wouldn't necessarily have a full-blown like server farm set up, but yeah, it is hardware. But you can do that with some of the smaller RAID arrays that we were showing earlier when we were talking about RAID. So again, it's going to really be based on, you know, the needs and requirements you have. Any questions on video editing workstations? Again, as Marvin mentioned earlier, we are going to have a graphic that kind of just breaks down, you know, each one of these things, what your upgrades are, you know, just to kind of make it a little bit easier to absorb and for study purposes.
And I literally had a performance-based question on the exam dealing with custom configurations. And it was so neat that they only gave you one pool of information to pull from. So when I kept, I had some of those configurations like memorized or just retained, and I was able to create that one PC correctly like I recalled it in the slides, and then I was able to use the leftover options to create the other PC. So it was really just being able to retain and remember a few of these, and I was able to identify the rest with what was left over. So that's something to keep in mind as we go forward. This is a very good PBQ style situation. Did you hit next already, Kelly?
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
I'm going to take over.
All righty. I will hand it over to Marvin. Do you want to take a quick 5-minute now, and then we can start right at this?
I
Take
like
a 5-minute break a little early.
Let's do that. I'm always taking
All
them
right.
late. Take a little early. See. So we now will talk about home server PCs, not to be confused with home theater PCs. We'll talk about that as well. Mr. Ronald, are you available, sir? I want you to read this one for me.
Home server PCs. As more computing devices move into a home environment, there is more need for a centralized PC to provide multiple services to all members of the house. Home server PC mainly supply 3 functions. So media streaming. Stream video to other computers in the house. The benefit are centralized storage of the content and reduced duplication of content on other PCs. File sharing, to keep all shared folders in the same location. It saves space and facilitates the creation of backups. And print sharing, to have a centralized control of printing. Printer permission can be used to control who does what to the printers, as well as who prints jobs get priority in a crunch.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Home server PCs are a thing, especially with everything being the way that we are moving and have a lot of information and working from home and things of that nature. The idea of having a home server PC style setup has been in the later 2000s a significant push for it. And I have a picture. I wanted to stop share and reshare to show you a picture of what it could look like. Given that opportunity, it doesn't have to look like this, but it can look like this. So I'm gonna start off with this YouTube one over the right. As you can see, it has a server PC that's away from everything else as far as not being like picture 2, which is a home server that can also serve as a PC. It's not stopping that device is being used, but everything is centrally stored there. That's the takeaway from that. So you can actually have it in a closet away, just going, running, doing this thing, or you could actually still have it available to be utilized. And there's a lot of different ways that people have it set up. And I think it's pretty neat. I would love to get one set up at some point. I can't justify it right now, but in due time. Let's see here. Can y'all see that now?
The right way, Marvin.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Kelly picked up on that. Why can't I get it yet, Kelly? You got it. It's not. It wasn't in the. It wasn't on the vision board for me and my wife in 2021. See if I can get it on the board. Can we see the Nearpod now? Is the Nearpod back up?
Marvin, how do you set up the initial CV, initial PC server that was in that first picture? If all it does is act as the server. Yeah, that one.
So it's not uncommon to bring a monitor and a keyboard to it to get everything up and going. and then move it away, because it's not, it's no need to have it continually there. Once you get it up and going, you can possibly remote to it at that point and be able to adjust it from on the fly from wherever you are, Marcus. But you will.
It's also not.
Go ahead.
Sorry. It's also not uncommon to have it be basically the main computer you use for the house.
Anyway.
And then it just does that file sharing in the background. So I mean, there's a couple different ways it can be set up. So it can just be the main PC of the house. Like that's how the setup we have at our house is the main PC I have. It essentially operates as a server for everything else in the house.
And just as a little information, I'm going to upgrade my PC from the 32-bit Win 7 soon. I'll let you guys know how that goes. It's going to go to Windows 10 64, and I'll see if I can get some better performance out of it. We'll see. We'll see. Let's see the requirements for this home server PC. Kimberly, would you read for me, ma'am?
Sorry, I was muted. Home server PC requirements. The requirements on software are not complicated, since any modem operating system enabled to share files and print services. Hardware needs apply primarily to the network speed and hard drive capacity and redundancy. If the home server is very active, the PCU and RAM are also important. Since all services are provided through the network, a gigabit Ethernet NIC should be used to avoid bottlenecks. If data redundancy is critical, 2 or more identical hard drives should be installed in a RAID configuration.
Thank you, ma'am. So that's to piggyback off of Kimberly. Gigabit NIC is a big deal for your home server, as well as your network attached one, which we'll talk about. And also the home theater one we'll talk about as well. But this is another thing, is making sure that if you're running a lot of, and you may, it's your home server, you may have a lot of critical information. RAID is something that we can throw in there as well. As Kelly mentioned, the CPU and RAM from your, if this is your normal home rig, it should suffice, and it should work it anyway, because a lot of those things like the share file, print service, all that's working on the backside, and just allowing your house to all be connected to pull from those pool of resources. So gigabit NIC, I'm glad we're talking about it. That's a big deal. And that's basically the fastest Ethernet option that we could have, that's allowing the least amount of issues with bandwidth, because you will want to be able to push out all of that just as much as on the network as if it was a wired connection. Home theater PC. This is the other one. Alimu, are you available? If you can read this one for me.
Yes, I am.
Thank you.
Home theater PC, HTPC. A home theater system enables to play music and watch movies and television. An optimal home theater has 5 components: a monitor, TV or projector, surround sound speakers, stereo receiver, home theater PC, network connectivity. The requirements for the HTPC are a video card with support for large monitors at high resolution, like HDMI connector. Fast SIP NIC NIC gigabyte preferred. Sound card that supports 5:1 or 7:1 stereo and DVD drive.
All right. Thank you, Alimu.
Sorry, 5.1 or 7.1 stereo and DVD drive. It's not an issue.
Thank you, sir. I'm gonna try to, let's see, virtual blah blah and none. All right. I don't know if you guys can see that. See DVI on this side, but then what is that right here? I'm doing it with my left hand. I'm trying to do everything differently. Can you make out?
That's HDMI?
HDMI. So the PC that I'm working on is ideally, Kelly, the one that I would possibly change into the home server. But that's something that I already have a graphics card to do it. And if I wanted to turn it into a home theater PC, I could as well. The greatest takeaway, and I don't want you to get those confused, is that server is there to bring everybody to that centralized place for information and have the ability to work with printing and accessing resources and files. Home theater PC is going to be located in that man cave or that media room or wherever it is, but it's going to have that HDMI connection on it, and it's going to have a significant sound card for the setup for the speakers. You're not asking for that in your home server, but in your home theater, you want that. You want to be able to address it to the TV that you have it, or a projector if you're fancy and you can do that, and all of the other nice let's stay at home and watch movies as opposed to going out there right now. Who's that? Who got that's Kelly? That's you?
Me.
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Kelly.
One easy way to kind of separate the two is typically the very definition of a server is it is a bigger computer that allocates resources. That's specifically what it's doing. It's allocating all these resources, being media, files, printing, all that stuff. It's allocating those resources out to the rest of the house. Home theater is going to be a dedicated system specifically for the home theater, and in all likelihood will be collecting some of that media and stuff that it's going to be showing from the home server in order to, give you the best experience possible. So the home theater may actually communicate with the home server to get some of those media files because it may not be stored locally, but the server is the allocator of those resources. Does that clear it up for everybody?
Another reason to have that gigabit NIC for the possibility of being able to stream and have that network connectivity. HBO Max is doing us a solid. I like the fact that you can watch those movies at the movies at home if you have a nice setup. I like that. I guess it's going to go to that unless something until the world opens back up. So yeah, I do like that. You got to take advantage of that while you can. So, all right. You know who I want to read this one. Everybody should know who I want to read this one, right? You might as well just start reading, sir. I don't have to call you. Do I have to call you?
I'll do it. Gaming PC.
No, Joseph, it's not for you. It's for
all right.
It's for go ahead, sir. I hate to call your name. We all know it's you. Jose, come on, hurry up, man. You know it was you.
Oh, it was me?
Yeah, it was you, sir.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead and read this.
It wasn't me.
Gaming PC. Well, I'm sorry. I thought you did say Joseph. Gaming PC. While casual gamers can get by with a thick client, those who take their gaming seriously want a powerful PC ready for every game. Requirements of essential features for gaming PC are fast multi-core processor, a lot of RAM memory, high-end video card, high-definition sound, cooling capacity.
Thank you, Jose. I'm messing with you, man. It was from yesterday. Kelly, Chris, and myself, we kind of talked with Jose about the ins and outs, and it kind of carried on for a while. So I figured that he would know I was gonna pull him on this one. Biggest thing that you see here, you see now cooling capacity, having the ability to liquid cool or have a very significant fan setup for gaming to keep that rig cool while gaming, because it gets hot with that with a lot of power getting utilized by that graphics card. And another cool thing is that if you really have a nice setup, the high definition sound. Most gamers use the speakers, the headsets, but if you wanted to immerse yourself in that experience and still be able to hear Kelly tell me, hey, watch your at 3 o'clock and crispy, you'll want a high definition sound. So the takeaway really is, and we know this, and I know Jose knows this now, it's going to be the graphics card and the cooling, but also high definition sound. It says a lot of RAM memory, but a lot of that RAM, a lot of the memory is going to be being pulled in from your graphics card to, because it's going to be graphics intensive. So that's something to take away from a gaming PC. I think we got a picture here. So,
Sir, so why do they ask for 8 GB of RAM alone? And then like some of the specs ask you for VRAM, which is the RAM from the graphics card.
well, everybody works in concert, but a lot of the memory that you would love to have being utilized while gaming, it will be coming primarily, and that's just it, primarily from that graphics card. It's going to be pulling heavily from that graphics card. But your processor, if you notice, you still will have a significant processor, and you want to have RAM to just make everything flow anyway. So, but a lot of that is going to be coming from your graphics card. Do you see these two lines right here? Anybody can tell me what that is?
That's the lines for the liquid cooling.
That's your liquid cooling.
That's your liquid cooling. That's your liquid cooling for that CPU. And this is a pretty big, well, one thing I noticed right away that kind of irks me, and that's because I watch these on YouTube and they talk about them, is the wire management. We could do so much better with these wires. Yeah. It shouldn't look like this, but this is what we have. One big thing is to show for this gaming PC is that it has liquid cooling as well as fans for exhaust and intake. And I'm pretty sure this graphics card may have a fan below as well. We just don't see it. It's not on top.
Are those hot swappable drives on the right-hand side?
Okay, nice. But every drive doesn't have to have the screws that go in on the side to put it in. There are a lot of companies and a lot of tower makers. They have it so you can just push your drives in, and it looks very hot swappable, but you're not hot swapping in this setting.
Okay.
I'm 90% positive you're not going to hot swap in this type of scenario, but it makes it so you can easily eject and push those drives away if it has the correct ports on the connectors on the backside. Alvarez.
I'm about to say that look
technically would be considered a cold swappable drive.
Yeah, the hard drives are cold swappable, but
okay.
Most custom towers like those, they have brackets. So you see those little their little pins on the side of the hard drives where they at. What happens is the hard drive sits in this bracket that allows it to slide into the tower itself. It helps with it being a modular unit.
Okay.
Appreciate it, bro.
Just for the ease of, like I said, swapping out the parts.
Cool.
We got some breakdowns of some PCs that we pulled. These prices and what's there may have already changed, but things that we wanted to point out, it's easy to point out. Most of these have at that time would be a significant graphics card. And as you go up to this 2000 number, you get 11 gigs on your graphics card. You also are getting a one of these had cooling. Yeah, Cooler Master. So it may have some cooling set up. i7 graphics card, i7 processor. Everything is just geared towards trying to have a PC that's robust enough and powerful enough to handle any game that's thrown at it. And of course, if it can handle games, it's going to handle your day-to-day if you also use it for that as well. And this one, all of them said VR ready. It's kind of neat. Kelly, you got to let me come over once you get your VR stuff set up.
Oh, VR is so fun.
I bet.
Absolutely.
I bet. And I predicted it. And the worst thing you can do is see somebody else come up with the idea that you already had in your head. So I said, hey, with like live sporting events, the best seat of the house now unless you just want the experience and tailgating, the best seat at the house is at home. You can get the stuff, you know, you got your drinks. You can go to the bathroom and not have to worry about whatever smells, whatever. You got the best seat at the house. It's temperature control. So what's stopping?
And they're also starting to do VR.
That's what I'm saying.
Like virtual presence at sporting events and big events like that. They're starting to do those.
Yeah,
I thought about that years ago, Kelly. Patent pending. I did not patent.
It's going like really head first in it with the
I can be courtside. I can be courtside at any basketball game. I even pay a ticket price for it, and everything looks like it's just right there, and I'm there, and it's all in my VR. So I thought about that.
Shows do that too. I saw that on Let's Make a Deal.
Really?
They got a whole back wall with nothing but people virtually on the show.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, now.
Like select view inside, and then it's like a back wall of just panels of everyone virtually looking and actually participating.
Hey, Kelly, I'm going to let you take over. I think I have a package.
Nope.
Hey, can I add a stupid comment?
Why not?
The thing I wanted to say is that we do think that maybe like VR would not be VR, but instead like putting yourself in a simulation at some point, or that would never happen.
I mean, I think you're speaking of basically like the singularity where your consciousness essentially can operate through the computer. And I mean, what was it Elon Musk is working on? Was it Neuronet or something along those lines? Neuralink. So he's working along something along those lines. I think the more likely option for the near future would be VR with the pseudo haptic suits that they got coming out. I mean, they do have some haptic suits that come out that are pretty neat, so you can actually feel things as they're happening and stuff like that. They have them for like full body, and then they have haptic feedback gloves, so you can actually feel texture as you're, dealing with stuff in VR. I mean, even years ago, they had what was called a 3D mouse that engineers would use, and it was like a big mouse that had a bunch of different connection points, and you could actually feel how rough something was as you were going over it and how textured it was, or if it was a smooth surface. It was really interesting where things are going with it, especially like in the VR world, where the technology was almost gimmicky back in the mid to late 90s. Like you would see the VR kiosks set up in the mall for like really cheesy games and stuff like that. And it was very much a gimmick for a while. And I think Game Boy jumped on it with their Virtual Boy. That was, pretty well fell flat. But now in the last 5-6 years, you're seeing a real rapid increase in the technology with regards to virtual reality. A lot of companies are jumping on board, trying to get into that space, and developers are spending hundreds of hours just trying to get it out there, and they may not even sell anything with it, but they're just trying to further that technology. So we're really on the cusp of a major push within the virtual reality ecosphere.
And it doesn't help, Kelly. Well, it also helps that look what we just been presented with the this whole pandemic, where a lot of people aren't able to. And most are stuck at home. If you can find a way to allow someone to still feel that community, that connection, or that experience of going out, who wouldn't pay for that? Who wouldn't want that? So this kind of pushed it some more. So you probably have a lot of dollars being thrown that way because we would want to be able to feel normal even in certain circumstances. And I don't know if anybody watched Ready Player One, but that movie is great. And that kind of
they had the haptic feedback in that for the body too.
Yep.
Come on, man. They did a great job with that. So imagine if we could get kind of close to that. Come on. Oh. Only if I can see in my lifetime. So
the likelihood of hooking up a big VR rig to a car battery in an abandoned car is really slim.
Hey man.
But as far as getting to the point where you have really, really good like haptic feedback suits and gloves and stuff like that, to where it is more of a feeling of presence within the environment, I absolutely see us making big leaps in that in like the next 5-10 years.
You're limited by your thoughts, Kelly. Leave me in my van alone, man. So I turned to the next slide. This is the slide that I was telling you about, and I also have it available to send to you as in a link, so you'll have it there. Plus, you can always get to this. So, wanted to make sure you had that. And it's just it's a very quick, hot little cheat sheet that has everything there. So if you're able to take this and digest this information, you'll know what's necessary when it comes towards any type of practice that we give you as far as testing, and also CompTIA versus the for the real test there.
I want to make a quick significant note. If you could go back to that slide, Marvin.
We're back.
Real quick. Okay. Just to so I know on the gaming slide, we said you wanted to basically upgrade everything, and that may well be the case. With regards to CompTIA, it is critical to pay attention to the checks on this particular slide. If you look at gaming, you do not do a massive upgrade on processor or RAM. As we had talked about prior, it's because the heavy lifting is going to be done by the video card, not by the CPU or the RAM. That is where your biggest bang for your buck is going to be coming from. So when they say, hey, we want to do upgrades to this, what can you do? Your big key ones you're going to go for is storage, 3D audio, and upgraded video cards. Any questions on that?
Are you guys using the word GPU synonymously with video on this chart?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir. And high-end cooling. I think cooling is the only thing that's with gaming. No other person is asking for high-end cooling. So that's another thing.
Correct. Yes, Marvin is correct.
You have the snapshot here. Of course, you'll have nearby access to. I just felt like it was a really good slide because it houses all of the workstation, all of the custom configurations that we would talk about. We haven't talked about NAS, but as you can see, even there, it's just storage, high capacity hard drives, and then it's going to be the gigabit for the networking. So, but as Kelly said, and as we were reading in there, I'm like, yeah, video is what it's not RAM, it's video. As you can even see, it's not even processor. It's really GPU and audio, cooling, and storage. That's it. All right. Luke one, can you read this one for me, sir?
If you want to make your file available on the network to all connected devices, a NAS is much like a mini server, contains CPU and RAM, except they don't have a full OS or inexpensive and easy to configure through an interface. Since all services are provided through the network, a gigabyte Ethernet NIC should be used to avoid bottlenecks. NAS mainly supplies two functions: media streaming, stream video to other computers on the network. The benefits are centralized storage of the content and reduced duplication of the content on other PCs. File sharing, to keep all shared folders in the same location. It saves space and facilitates the creation of backups.
Thank you, Luke one. And so basically NAS is a cheaper home server, right? That's pretty much what we just gathered here. It's just a cheaper version of a home server. But the greatest takeaway is that all they want is you want hard drives for storage, and you also want that gigabit NIC for your network. It's self-contained and it doesn't have a full OS like your home server does. So that's what I wanted to get from NAS. And like I said, a lot of questions is really gigabit NIC. That's what they want you to know, that when you don't want to deal with those bottlenecks that you can deal with if you don't have the correct setup for your NAS. So hopefully we hit all these objectives. We made sure that we can identify the configurations for the particular type of customers that we will have. Of course, you know you have a Kahoot coming, right? or we actually gonna have a review with Kelly and my Kahoot maybe. Describe the features and characteristics for customer configuration, and given a scenario, you'll be able to select the correct components when putting a custom PC together with those needs. Are there any questions pertaining to customer configuration? I said customer configuration, custom configuration. I don't know why I put mer on that. Right now, before we close out this particular T session. You got the chart, very helpful, very beneficial for what we will ask. But any questions now, you can. If not, we will close this out and talk about next steps.